All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It is my pleasure to welcome Coach Scott Fleming at our basketball and embassy international clinic. Coach, how is everything going for you during this lockdown?
Well, I'm doing well. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona right now. I will be going back to India at some point, but while this pandemic's going on, this is where home base is.
Well, it sounds like a good place to be. If you like hot weather, definitely. So,
It's going to get hot.
yeah, I can imagine. So today we're going to be talking about shot selection. And Coach, why don't you first tell us about yourself, about your journey, and how you got from uh, how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, so I know I look a lot younger than this, but I've been coaching now 37 years, and primarily was a college coach at every level, all different levels, assistant, head coach. And then I had the opportunity to go to the D League, which is the G League now, and coach with the Texas Legends alongside somebody you may have heard of, Del Harris, and that was a great learning experience for me. Probably talk about him a little bit later, but and then from there I headed to India. Didn't even know there was basketball in India, but went there as their national coach and was there almost 3 years and had some success there. Really enjoyed my time, and then came back to be a college coach. And then about 2.5 years ago, the NBA contacted me about going back to India. And right now, I am the technical director of the NBA Academy, basically the head coach for the top 24 young boys in India. And the NBA's goal is to get them, to colleges and to eventually have an NBA player out of this group. And so that's where I'm at. That's a lot of years doing different type of coaching levels, and I've enjoyed all of them.
Awesome, awesome. So today we are going to be talking about shot selection. So my first question will be, what how do you determine like what is a good shot for your team and for your style of play? Because some teams they like to play fast and they like to get a little bit looser with the shot selection, while some teams they just play very, very, very tactically and they always only shoot the open shots. How do you define what is best for your team?
Yeah, so let's start with, everybody wants to get an open shot. That's assumed, and you're trying to shut down on the defensive end open shot. So that's what we're looking for. But shot selection is more than getting an open shot, and I think you have to really meet with your players. You have to define their roles and let them know what an open shot is. I think we've all been frustrated at times with players taking bad shots, and you've heard the stories of somebody, chucking up a bunch of threes and missing them, and a coach yelling at them, and they're saying, "Coach, I was open. I was open." Well, there was a reason you were open. You can't shoot. And so I think shot selection goes far beyond just getting an open shot. And here's what I'm going to talk to you about today is being more specific with your cues and your messages, rather than just saying, "Hey, don't shoot that," or "You're shooting too much," or "That wasn't a good shot," to really give them things to think about. So the first thing I'll start with, and we'll answer somewhat your question, is it's more than just having an open shot. It's having an open shot for the right person in the right spot. And those are three criteria that I think determines what a good shot is. A good shot is not just an open shot, because we know we all have players that they can be as open as can be, but that's not a good shot for them. So that I hope that kind of starts things off and answers your question there, that we really have to define the roles with our players, and you have to meet with them and really explain to them what their role is. Now that can change as they improve, but you need to let them know that that's not the shot we're looking for from you.
So after you already like establish with your players like what kind of shots they can take and they can take, they are not always going to listen, right? They always wanna go do their own thing, and sometimes they just gonna be feeling themselves, wanna do heat checks. How do you actually? Is there any way how you can actually teach it and let it like uh you know soak in their brains that
Yeah,
what they supposed to do, what they not supposed to do?
sure. So we have two different systems that help us with our shot selection as a team, every team I've been on. And one of them is defining what a good shot is. And we have a system, an ABC system. And we chart it in practice. We're not calling it out in games, but we will use it at halftime. We'll chart it, talk about it at halftime. So an ace shot is one for you, but open, right person, right spot is one you can take anytime. That's a great shot, and we're never going to have a problem with that. A B shot, is acceptable late in a possession. Maybe you're hot that night. Maybe the defense isn't guarding you in a certain area. And so that's acceptable. It's not the best shot. And then a C shot, obviously, should never be taken. That's just a poor shot for you. It could be for anyone, but particularly for that player. And so in practice, we will, and I'll talk a little more about how we do that, even have drills for that. But so that's one of the systems we have, is that A, B, C, identifying what a good shot is. The second system we have has to do more with three-point shooting. And so we have what we call the traffic light system. So I'll meet with my players, before the season starts and follow up with them and identify what light they have. And so for my top shooters, that shooters that can shoot 40%, maybe high 30s, they have a green light. That means open, right person, right spot. If you're facing the basket, it's a good look for you. You have the freedom to take that anytime. The yellow light would be, again, late in the possession. Maybe you're a big man, they're not guarding. You can shoot it, you're a decent shooter. We don't want you to shoot it early in the possession, but you have some freedom to shoot that shot in the right circumstances. And then obviously the red light is don't even think about it. You're not a three-point shooter. You can't shoot threes. And so then I really challenge them to move up a light. If you're a yellow light guy, let's become a green light guy so I can change that. And if you're a red light guy, you're trying to work to be a yellow. And so these are things that are more specific in helping them. And it's kind of Pavlov's dog. I mean, when they take the bad one or they don't do it right, I mean, they're getting told that was that was not the right shot. You're a yellow light guy and that was too early, or that was a C shot. You should have taken it. So again, I mean, those are things that I feel like you need to have some cues and be more specific than just, that was a bad shot, or don't, you're shooting too many shots.
Do you ever sometimes establish with your players how many shots they can take per game, or not even there? It's more like is there like actual range? Like, let's say you have a star player and you tell them, hey, I want you to take at least 10 shots from 2, 3 shots from 3, or or somebody that can shoot as well. You're like, hey, you can take maximum of 4 shots per game. Do you ever approach it like that?
I really haven't. I think these other systems, at least for me, work better, and because shooting is not an equal opportunity thing. There's guys, and we talk about that. There's guys on the team that should be taking a lot more shots, and some that are taking less. And I don't want to limit them to any number. But I think these systems that we have, the ABC, the traffic light system, meeting with our players, defining their roles, I think things will fall in place without putting, a number on that. I think those numbers will come out in the end, probably that you want, or at least close to it. But I don't want to limit numbers. That's my philosophy.
Do you ever sometimes keep analytics of try to find different colorations between, when this guy takes this many shots, then we are down, we always lose by this many points, or stuff like this? Do you ever, and also with that being said, do you ever look at analytics as a for purpose of game preparation?
I have to a point, not to the extent that a lot of teams do. I know the NBA teams are all over it, and they know how many times somebody sneezed on the bench, pretty much. So, but I think it would be helpful. I haven't used that as much with that, but I think that's something we have looked at more from a lower level, probably analytics standpoint, of if this person took so many shots, or that, did we win or lose that game? And so, but I would commend somebody doing that, and I think that would something going forward I'll even look more into.
So, Coach, can you talk about how do you prepare your players for a game against a team that plays basically run and gun? And if you guys, let's say you guys want to slow down the tempo, how would you prepare how many shots you're going to take and all that stuff?
Well, of course, my style primarily has been an up tempo, and so fast breaking. I do think, and this kind of will bleed into another subject, but I think that's why I'm using these two together to really relate, because I think defensive transition is one of the most important things in the game. And we all talk about having a fast break, and we all have these number systems, and I believe in it. We call our system, pressure offense. We're pushing it on misses and makes and trying to get open shots, like we talked about before. We don't want to put pressure on our half-court defense to do all of our scoring. Now, to beat the good teams, you have to play good half-court. You have to execute. You can't just score in transition. But I've always felt like I don't want to put pressure on my half-court offense to do all the scoring. And so we're going to push it up the floor, and we'll talk a little more about that later. Defensively, we're really big on defensive transition. And so we have a system where our 1 and our 2 guard actually leave to get back on the shot. We're not worried about them doing any kind of offensive rebounding. They need to get back. And then we have our 3, 4, and 5 crash the boards. But as soon as we lose possession, they are racing down the floor. We talk about them finding the ball at half court and getting into our rules. You have to have 5 people down the floor set ready to play defense to get it, to be really a good team defensive team. And so I think defense and transition, which we work on, we have drills for, we work on that quite a bit, is just as important as your offensive transition. The teams I have, we're a no layups team. And I can talk a little bit more about what we do in that regard, but we don't want to give up any layups. Our great game would be, 0 to 2 or 3 layups a game, and we're going to get 10 or more, easy baskets. And so I think that kind of answers your question, but I've been primarily a fast breaking team, but more of a half court team. We do some pressing and things like that, but primarily I'm trying to take away all transition from my opponents.
So when you mentioned the fast break, so how do you look at your players shooting threes in fast break? Is there something that you look for? I mean, again, with also considering the player personnel, right? But is it something that you look for? And do you also use any type of secondary break to specifically create 3-point shots in the fast break?
Yeah, we do. And this gets back to the traffic light system. If it's somebody that if I've given them a green light and they're wide open from that 3-point line, I mean, unless they have a layup that they can take, we're going to give them the freedom to put that up. And in our transition offense, we release our 2-man. And I know everybody doesn't do that, and there's pros and cons to that, but I've kind of weighed those, how many offensive rebounds is his man really going to get? So he's taken off on the shot, heading down the right sideline, or if he's on the left side, he can do that. And many times we'll get a rebound, and we're looking to get it down to the floor to him as soon as possible. Now, if we've been scouted, they may take away some layups. Some of the teams that haven't scouted you well, you'll get even layups out of it. But if not, we're getting it down to them. If they're wide open from that 3-point line, we'll give them the freedom to take that. Again, if they don't have that green light, that wouldn't be a time to take the shot. As far as we have 3 phases to our offensive transition. One is our primary break, which everybody has. It's a numbered break. We're pushing, we're attacking. We're trying to get down the floor and score on misses and makes. We take that ball out quickly on makes and hopefully 1 or 2 passes up the floor. That's our first part. Our second part of transition is called our early offense. And we send our postman, we send him to the rim. He's a rim runner, but then he'll go opposite to the dunker spot of the short corner. And so we want to leave a lot of room for penetration. The other thing to do, our 2 and our 3 men who take the wings down the floor have to go to the corners. They can't stop at the wing. And I think everybody knows why, we're trying to get spacing. Everybody, knows spacing is really important in half-court offense. So they go to those corners. The post guy goes opposite. And then we run really kind of a dribble drive situation at that point. That's our early offense where we're driving and lifting. If we drive baseline, they're dropping. If we drive towards someone, they're coming behind. We have drills, we call it relocation shooting, where we do that several times a week to just teach them those dribble drive actions and driving and kicking. and we make that a part of our fast break drills. And then the third part is what I'd call the secondary break. I used to have secondary breaks where, maybe a stagger double away or a pass, a basket cut, and then we get into our offense, where now the offense that I'm running is our secondary break. It flows right into what we call our 4-out double post offense. And so, we go from the primary break attacking to if there's opportunity for the dribble drive to do that, and then it flows right into our primary half-court offense, which, again, wherever the pass goes, that actually might be a stagger double, might be a basket cut, it might be a drag pick and roll, and that's all part of our offense. And so that has become really our secondary break. And after 7 years and trying a lot of different stuff and having all the secondary break and things, this is where I've kind of landed and feel most comfortable with and feel like we're the best at.
Great. Sorry about the dog in the background.
No problem.
Yeah, one of our biggest issues in Coaches Connect, online Coaches Connect, were just the barking dogs in the background. But
well, there was I heard one time where they got down and barked like a dog. So I don't know if you've ever seen it. That was practice defense, I guess.
Oh, I don't think I heard that one. I gotta check that out.
If you put out of bounds play barking like a dog on YouTube, I think you'd see it. So check that out after we're done here.
I definitely have to. Coach, so there was a question about how can a player earn a green light in your program? Is there like a certain drill, perhaps based in-game stats, like as a field goal percentage that you use for the players that can earn a green light? Because I know when I played, we had a.
Of course, I think in the game they need to be in the upper 30s to 40%. But we do this a lot in practice. I mean, we give them a chance to improve their light in practice. And I think, based on some raw analytics, I guess we've done in practices through the years, that a 50% shooter in practice from the three-point line usually translates to about a 40% shooter in games. So, it's not an exact science, but it's going to be pretty close if you chart it. And we've done that at times. And so, if you're 45 in practice, we're looking probably about a 35 in games. I think the pressure games, the defense, all of that in that pressure situation, I think drops that percentage some. So if you have a player that's shooting 40% in practice, I don't think that's a guarantee that he's going to do it in the game. And so I think, you're looking at 5 to 10, I think almost a 10% difference from the games. And so, of course, we run a lot of drills where we're shooting threes and we're scrimmaging and all of that. And so that's where that's computed from.
I'm not sure if I code that right, but do you is that the 50%, is it for when you play live in practice, or is it for drills, or is it for spot-up shooting?
Yeah, it would primarily be when we scrimmage, okay? We might look, again, at how they're shooting even in the drills. And we have even individual player development drills where they're shooting threes. And, it's still looking at it. If they're knocking down half of their shots, it's probably going to compute to being a pretty decent shooter. But, we've all had shooters that can make them in practice. And come game time, it's a whole new ball game. It's a lot tougher. So I think primarily we're looking at it when we're scrimmaging.
Definitely, there is a lot of suspect practice players out there, so I definitely agree on that. Do you also have like a specific drill that you measure your the progress that your players make? I know that like when I played, we had this drill and we had to make like 12 threes in a minute or something like that, and if you made 50, you had an automatic green light to shoot any shot that you wanted, but nobody ever made it.
Right. I remember when I was with the Dallas Mavericks G League team, I was in a lot of their practices, and a lot of people run this drill, but this was kind of a staple at the end of practice. And if you made the amount that you were supposed to make, they'd ring a bell. And that was the whole deal behind it. But that was 25 shots at 5 spots around the three-point line, 5 in the corner, 5 wing, 5 top, 5 wing, 5, in the other baseline corner. And, I can remember Dirk and Jet and all those guys really competitive on this thing. And their goal, they had to make 20 out of 25 for the bell to ring. And so, there are certainly some other drills that we do as well, but that's one we've added to our player development part of it is knocking down those shots. And there's other drills you have to do that that are on the move, and pull up off the dribble. But that's one of the drills that we kind of see where they're at to make those 20 out of 25 is that goal. And I go back to even Dirk Nowitzki getting all excited, when that bell rang, we made his 20 or 21 or whatever.
I know this is a little bit off topic, but you spend time around like one of the greatest competitors, and guys like Dirk Nowitzki is as a world class. Can you talk about his competitiveness, his work ethic, and and then, well, what separates him from the other NBA players that were they were probably less talented than him?
Yeah, well, that Dirk was a 7-foot guard, basically. He was never really quick. He was never overly athletic, but he was a 7-footer that could shoot the lights out, that was really smart and was a very hard worker. And so he was more of a skill guy that had height. And I said at one point, I felt like, there have been better players than Dirk, but when he was at his prime, I'm not sure there was a better player at shooting with pressure on him. Of course, he had the 1 foot step back and all of that. But one thing I'll say about him, and I didn't coach him per se. I was with the G League team, so I don't want to go too far with that. But I saw him in practice, in games a lot, and he was usually the first one to be there. We've all talked about last one to leave. He and Jason Terry would stay after. They would kind of partner up and do a lot of these shooting drills together, and just spend more time than the rest of the guys. And so, great person too. I mean, I remember a story or something that happened at a practice I was at one day when we had a bunch of high school coaches there just watching. They were allowed to come in and watch the practice. And I remember Dirk Nowitzki was the only player on the team that went over and shook all their hands and thanked them for being at practice that day. And certainly he didn't need to do that. But that just, that's a little sideline there of how good a guy he is. But I'll tell you what, when he stepped between those lines, he was as competitive as they came. And I was so happy I was there in 2011 when we won the championship. And the city of Dallas was so happy, a lot for him, because he was, a lifer with the Mavericks and probably could have got higher contracts and everything else, but stayed with them, was loyal, and he got that contract. But he was an extremely hard worker and very competitive.
Awesome. Do you know if Dirk had any specific number of shots he was trying to shoot per day? Let's say 500 per day, 1,000 per day, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't read it offhand, but I know there was a number there. I think I've read that before and saw him taking that many shots. But there might have been like a 500 or something like that. But I think there was. Not sure.
Whenever you encourage your players to work on their shot, is there any specific number of shots that you encourage them to take? Let's say at least minimum 300 a day, or?
Yeah, that's kind of changed different because I've coached anywhere from NBA players to now high school players, and so that's changed. And some of it has to do with even their availability. And I've had the gun and Dr. Dish and all those, and so we've really encouraged them to use those when they don't have partners, or even when they do. And so those have been different numbers. There might have been 500 a day, and we break it down to mid-range and 3-point shots or pull-up shots, and so many threes, so many mid-range, and so I have had numbers like that. It hasn't always been the same, but we make sure that they're working out of practice. We talk to them all the time, as I'm sure the rest of you coaches are, that just that practice time isn't enough. If you want to be good or average, this is enough. If you want to be great, then you've got to put the time in outside of practice, and you have to go game speed. So many players just grab the ball and start chucking them up and kind of going half speed, 3/4 speed. But the only way you're going to get better, and we tell our players all the time, as I'm sure you do, that players become great when nobody's watching. And we see them when they're packed arenas in the NBA or college level or FIBA. But these great players are working their tails off when there's nobody watching. And they're taking them seriously, not only to take so many shots, but we look at how many makes, and we have them chart their percentage. And now these machines, the gun and Dr. Dish will do that for you, which is great as you're shooting and give you the percentage that you're shooting and how many shots you've taken.
Whenever you encourage your players to work on their shot on their own, do you want them to shoot to also do like a drill, so like shoot off the move, off the dribble, and what would be like the good ratio to shoot between spot up shots and also between the game situation type of shots?
Yeah, again, that varies some depending on the coach. For me, I'd like to see them. Again, if they're a perimeter guy, then I'd like to see about half their shots be from three. And this is the other thing that I've kind of done, especially when I was at the college level. We allowed them to shoot shots from 15 feet and in, and then we if they had the green light or even yellow light, we'd allow them to shoot threes. Between 15 and that 3-point line, we called it the no zone. And we didn't, again, I've changed a little bit on that, but I think I still feel like that's not a great shot just inside the 3-point line. If you're gonna shoot those kind of shots, and let's work on stepping back and getting another point for it. So I would say when we're giving them their percentages, we want half of them at least to be threes. We want mid-range shots. We want so many off the dribble, certainly free throws, and so that's going to make up that other 50%. If it's a post player, obviously you're going to add 30 to 40%, maybe some low post moves, and then have them move up to mid-range if that's their shot. And if we can get a post player, and these days that's really important, and we have a couple of big kids right now at the academy that shoot the three really well, and if we're going to get them to that red, to that yellow, and hopefully to that green before we're done.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on developing? When you have an athletic guy, but he's not skilled, and let's say he's already 17 years old. Do you think it's still possible to develop him into a shooter, or he's just gonna be the hard worker? And what are your experiences with developing players like?
Yeah, and I've had players like that at the college level. I certainly have them now. In India, they start kind of late. Some of them, they don't really learn to shoot too well until they come to us or they get a decent coach there. But it's important. I think that's one thing you can teach is shooting. Starting with an athletic kid is great. We have a kid right now that's a 6'6" guard that's really athletic. He hasn't been a great shooter in the past, but he's really working at it. We're having him put up a lot of threes, a lot of open perimeter shots, and he's gotten a lot better. And I think he's going to end up, a green light shooter. Right now he's a yellow. But there's certain things you can control, and I think that's one of them. Now, somebody might say, well, he's never going to be a great shooter, but it's hard for me to accept that if you teach them the right way, first of all, and sometimes you have to take a guy and get rid of everything he's ever learned. And my question, to a player like that is, do you want to be good or do you want to be great? It comes down to that. I'll tell them, keep doing what you're doing if you want to be good. If you want to make a few shots here and there. Yeah, but if you want to be great, here's what it's going to take. We're going to change your shot totally. We're going to start. And here's the thing. It's tough for them because when you're teaching somebody a new shot or a new form of a shot, it's going to be bad before it gets worse. And so you can't do that really during the season. It's really tough. And they have to be really disciplined in the off season, because when they go to play pickup ball, where they go to play with their friends, while you're changing their shot and they have a new shot, they're going to be bricking them. They're going to have some bad shots. They're going to be embarrassed. And so they either need to be willing to do that or to kind of stay away from, scrimmaging for a little while until that shot starts to form, because it's going to get worse and then it's going to get a lot better. And we've had several examples of that. I remember a kid I had at the college level could jump out of the gym, extremely athletic, but his shot was bringing the ball, behind his head and flinging it. And he just was never going to get better that way. And so we said, forget everything you've ever done, learned, we're going to start you from scratch and teach you a fundamental shot. And it took him a while, and he really disciplined himself, and he became a pretty good three-point shooter. He wasn't our best, but he could knock them down. You know, I've had other kids where we tried to do that, and they wouldn't do it because they get in the off season and they'd start playing pickup ball and you know, bricking a few and looking bad, and so they go right back to their old shot. And I just tell them, okay, you know, you're as good as you're going to get right now until you change.
There was a question. When discussing shot selection, I've heard that many coaches stress the importance of room and rhythm. Where do you space your perimeter players in your dribble drive offense to encourage the rhythm jump shots?
Ask that again. I'm not real clear.
Yeah, where do you space your perimeter players in your dribble drive offense to encourage the?
Okay. Yeah. So I talked about that earlier. You know, our early offense, and so we want our perimeter players. First of all, our two wings, our 2 and a 3, most of the time would be in the very corners of the court. And we're going to drive, you know, what we call the slot areas. The slot area would be just outside the elbows at the 3-point line. And so that's where we're going to have our top two. And that may be a 4-man to start with anyway, and then in our point guard. And then we want our post player usually opposite the ball until he comes to the ball on the wing posting up. And so that we have all that spacing. And so we have 4 things we talk about to keep that spacing and to kind of teach them how to cut. And we call it relocation shooting. I'm sure many of you have done this, but I'll just go through it. So if we have a man on the ball side corner, we drive to the elbow area, we want that person lifting from the corner. And so we've got that kick out for him. If we talk about if someone goes away from you, if they're on the wing and they go away, we want to follow them. Okay, so that if they drive to the baseline, they get cut off by help defense, they can kick back to us. We talk about if we're on the top in those slot areas and we drive toward the middle of the floor toward the other player, we want them to cut behind for that kickback. And then the last one I think we all do is if we drive baseline, we always want that opposite wing to drop to the corner. And so we can make that baseline pass. And so that's kind of the spacing that we use. And those are the rules that we have. We call it relocation shooting. And we do that, if not every day, at least every other day. And I'll just say this too. Sometimes we have to change up our drills, you know, same skills, different drills. I believe in that. You don't want to do the same drill every day. And so we try to have multiple drills for the same kind of skills. Again, talking about same skills, different drills, but that's how we work on our spacing as well as our movement.
Awesome. Coach, what would you recommend to players that, you know, don't have coaches that are able to teach them how to shoot a proper jump shot? What information should they be looking at? What players should they be watching? And what is the step-by-step how to fix your own jump shot, basically?
Yeah. You know, of course, there are a lot of things, advantages now online that we never had, you know, when I was a player or even back when I was coaching in the early days, that they can get a lot of free material, as you all know, on YouTube. They just got to be careful, you know, and I remember in my younger years as a coach getting the VHS tapes on shooting. And I remember a great video by Glenn Rice years ago. But, you know, there are some real keys that we all teach with shooting and lining up, and there's some differences there, but they've got to keep it simple. They've got to, you know, they have to have balance. They got to get their feet in the right position. That's really important. They have to get their elbow in. They have to make sure that the ball is not laying on their palms, but on the pads of their fingers. And then, you know, it's really important that they have a high trajectory. You know, there's a lot of guys that shoot flat shots. And I tell them, again, I get back to the same thing. You want to be good or you want to be great. If you keep shooting that flat shot, you're never going to be great. And so I've never seen a great shooter with a flat shot because, you know, it's got to be perfect to go in. And here's what I tell my players, you know, if you have a high arcing shot, you can miss and it still goes in. And what I mean by that, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to swish. It can hit the top of that rim and bounce around a couple of times and still go in. And so I even use, with the young kids all the way to NBA players, I've talked about the face of a clock and shooting that ball at the 1 o'clock point. If you have 12, 1, 2, and 3 is straight across, getting that high arc. Because there's two reasons for a flat shot in my mind. One is if you're palming the ball, that's going to be a flat shot. And the second one, if your release point isn't high enough. And so I know there's a lot of tools now even that can take those, can show you those arcs and show where those are. But for the young guy that doesn't have a coach or have those kind of things around them, they've got to start with those fundamentals, and they can be found, even on YouTube or certain kind of coaching, and hopefully they can find somebody that has been taught, even if it's another player or somebody they can get a hold of.
Awesome. Coach, can you talk about some, speaking of already technique, can you talk about some red flags in some misconceptions, some misunderstanding when it comes to teaching and learning jump shot?
Yeah, one that I've kind of gone back and forth a little bit, and there's some differences on this. We used to say always 10 toes to the basket, all facing the basket, and I have no problem teaching that. I've taught that myself. I think there's actually a kind of a natural, a little bit to the right if you're right-handed, left if you're left-handed with your lined up. I think the other thing is, for most players, it's pretty tough to shoot a jump shot from the three-point line. And so we talk about a hop shot where you want to, I believe, again, there are guys that can do it without doing this, and there's some that can make threes with a jump shot. But I think normally for most people, they want to land in front of the three-point line, start behind it, land in front of it, and not with a jump, but just more of a little bit of a hop to give them that thrust up there. I think also, there are things that footwork is really important, using your legs and having them, wide enough. I think a lot of players still shoot with their feet too close together. And then, one important thing that I think we've all done, and I think it's really good, is one-hand shooting and starting there, making sure, every young kid wants to go out and shoot threes or wants to shoot the long shots. And even with my boys, when they were young, my own children, they wanted to do that. I, wouldn't let them. So I think it's really important. And I tell this, I saw something one time, I think on air or whatever, that Steph Curry, that's how he starts his warm up every day before the game, is he comes in and he does his one-hand shooting and he moves his way out. And so with all of our players, and now this is the first time I've had high school age kids, and they all want to just start out, out of their range. I think it's really important to shoot where it's comfortable for you. And some of them, the FIBA lines, a little too far. And then, man, you get to an NBA line, so that's a launcher. You have to really be ready. That's why some of these guys from college struggle. We think, man, they were a great three-point shooter in college, but they get to the NBA, that's significantly back. And so I think it's really important to stay within your range as long as you need to, and then build your strength and start with that one-hand shooting. We're very close to basket, and you're working on swishing that. And here's where all those fundamentals are coming in, where you're, the ball's off your palm and on your pads, your elbows in. You're locking, and we talk about locking and snapping, that follow through, holding that. So many players just shoot and kind of whip that ball hand back right away. And so just do the one hand shooting every day to start with, and then step back and then bring that left up just as a placement holder, because, when they're young, they want to shoot with two hands, and then eventually just keep moving back. But I think that's a big key is staying within your range. And then as you get older, at the NBA level, at the college level, you need to really work at those perimeter, those three-point shots. And it's, until you take them in a game, you've got to get, I look at a guy like Brooks Lopez. He was over to India, spent some time with us a couple of BWBs, and then when we went over with the junior NBA team for the global championship, and he came to our games and watched our young Indian boys, girls, and invited us for lunch. But I say all that to say, there's a guy that's transformed his game totally, and he was strictly kind of an inside guy, post up, get some rebounds. And now look at him in those Milwaukee Bucks games. He's just standing on that 3-point line waiting for Giannis or somebody to kick in the ball. And that has totally made him so much more valuable. And so I know I'm not kind of progressing here, but thinking about, again, putting the time in and shooting it right to start with, starting with those one-hand shooting, but eventually working out to the 3-point line.
Awesome. Coach, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. I know we got a little bit off topic, but I feel like this was very valuable information for all the coaches watching, and I feel like it's definitely gonna help a lot of us to navigate our players through the process. And I appreciate you taking your time to speak to all of us, especially during this crisis and this lockdown. And I wish you all the best and good luck with your next season if it resumes, hopefully.
Thanks so much. I hope I gave a few nuggets that they can take away. I know these are things that are a little bit different than just X's and O's, but they're important. They're important, and a lot of experience, a lot of failures and successes that got me to this point.
Most definitely. Thank you so much too, Coach. Have a good one and good luck and stay safe.
All right. Thank you.